Hi everyone once again.
Hi there.
The usual people here here in the discussion.
Still at the same place?
Still at the same place, maybe a bit of a different background. I want to seem smart, so I have a lot of books behind me. Yeah, I think in the last video we mentioned that there would be a bit of a follow-up on the portfolio management topic. So it's a bit of a continuation of the last video. Maybe looking at a bit from software side of things and what kind of solutions there are on the market. And I think we have two very good examples that approach the same topic from a very different perspective.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we already talked about it. We are actually having two solutions in our portfolio, and I think we did already videos with both of them, that the one a little bit more often than the other maybe. So we somehow want to get it a little bit even today.
Yep. Okay.
But
so
yeah, maybe I could directly pop up my screen actually, and we can start working on one of those, right?
Yeah, but just then maybe as a bit of a summary, and then the two tools or two softwares that we really use to support the portfolio management process would be Clarity and ServiceNow's ITBM, right? I think the two different approaches is really so Clarity takes it from really rather road mapping perspective, and then ServiceNow is rather using a classical portfolio management approach to manage the investments.
Exactly. So that's what you actually see here. If we look at, and this is Clarity in one of the most recent releases, Clarity is really going very, very much into the direction of what they call digital product management, which is maybe per definition not 100% the same thing as you would see with a classical portfolio management. But if you look at the trends in the market, from my perspective at least, that's actually what most of the companies do. They do not really only do project management as such. They really think on a little bit different scale, talking about really managing products instead of only projects. And that's what actually a roadmap is, a very good tool to look at those things, because you then have your, it's actually like a Gantt chart view with different tasks, but these tasks are not tasks in a project, but are actually real projects or demands or whatever you want to have here.
Yeah. But then they are not necessarily products in here, right? So these are the projects that relate to one product, or how does it exactly work?
I mean, in general, if you look at Clarity specifically, you will still have a roadmap where you want to achieve something specifically. So in our case, for example, we have a roadmap for the an idea roadmap. So where you maybe gather specific business-related ideas, put them on a roadmap, and then really start to working on it. So it's really a top-down method, and it's actually really giving you the opportunity to set up a plan right from the beginning. Because normally, if you talk about portfolio management or project management in general, you always have to have something at the beginning. So you either have an idea or a demand or something like that, and then you start on planning based on that. With the roadmaps, you can actually design your cornerstones and then start planning and developing these ideas, actually. So it's a little bit of a mixture.
Okay, makes sense. And then the color coding in this case implies that they belong kind of together, right? So they support the same initiative. Let's call it an initiative, or
for example, yeah. In our case, the color coding is based on the investment lifecycle. So you could have like, if I go for strategy, which is the swim lane actually. So the swim lanes, these are these elements here that you have. These are indicating that these projects or ideas, or let's call them investments to be easy, that they belong to each other. So for example, if you look at the security enterprise, all these items that are in here, they belong to security enterprise. And
Okay.
the same is true for delight the customer. So these are actually initiatives that you want to pursue to meet a goal or a specific product or whatsoever that is called delight customers to drive revenue.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense.
And I think in general, if you look at portfolio management, and the last time when we talked about it, we were actually saying that portfolio is more than just stuffing together investments and structuring them.
Yeah.
And that is exactly what you see here, basically. It's, yeah, of course, it's an aggregation of projects, but I think the most important thing are two items. The one thing is the possibility that you can start doing scenarios. And this is interesting because when you talk about portfolio or roadmap planning or however you want to call it, that what a good PPM tool sets apart from another one is actually the possibility to really be able to set up multiple plans with the same data underlying, but to, let's say, play around with different initiatives or different goals you might want to achieve, because all of them could have a different impact. And the really nice thing is that you can then say, okay, if I compare those, how do they differ? What elements have changed since the beginning? And that's really interesting because if this is not something that you set in stone at the beginning of the year, it's actually developing, and it has to be changed on a regular basis. And that's what you want to achieve, actually, to see what was my initial plan, where am I now, and what is the future, and you can compare it.
Very interesting. Yeah.
And the same is actually true if you look at those from a investment, let's say from an approval perspective. I mean, here we have a very, very simplistic view on approving or selecting investments to be executed. So if I select one of these elements, maybe these figures here will start to change based on the targets I set. But it's getting even more interesting if I then start comparing or checking the different plans that I have and development, still having always the same figures, but having complete different numbers behind. And based on that, you can really drive the decision-making process because all look at the same thing, actually.
No, I think it's that's important. So I think this is a great decision-making tool and place to make decisions based on the data that you have in front of your eyes. It's easy to compare different scenarios or different situations.
Exactly. And the same is actually true if you look at, let's start with ServiceNow in this case. It's actually the same. I mean, it's from a principle perspective, it's the same thing. Yeah, you have a portfolio, which is an overarching goal. Yeah, in this case, an application organization. In our case, you have a fiscal year, so you have a, let's say, time box where you want to plan it. And you then see different metrics to say. Yeah. So you have your budgets, you have benefits, and you have some actual whatsoever. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
What I think, if you look at the two tools, they are doing more or less the same thing in visually a little bit different. But what I think what is in ServiceNow a real good idea is, and we talked about this already, is this. If you look at the possibility to structure demands, that's actually the elements that we see here in this grid, and have them being evaluated by different stakeholders in the organization, you get a standardized view on the value versus the risk of specific demands for the organization. And then this actually eases up the approval process, because you're not making decisions solely based on who shouts the loudest, gets the most budget. It's really more on, okay, what are the evaluations from the different people that actually should have a say in such a process? And based on that, I can make my decision.
Yeah, so you have actual data points instead of opinions. Yeah, I think that's also very good. I think in the last session also we discussed that a lot of times evaluations are going based on guess or personal relationships, and I think this brings a good visibility on
Yep.
on your investments on a rather objective form.
Yeah, and the same is true when you look at resources. Yeah, I mean, if you look at resources, you always at the beginning. In this case, I look at a year. Yeah, you have the different quarters, and if you want to do a planning properly, you need to know upfront what is awaiting you in the next year. Because when I look now, going into the planning for the next fiscal year, 2021. Now is the time to already start working on, okay, how many people do I need with specific skills? Because now I can still hire them by my own. If I wait another 3 to 6 months, I would have to hire externals, which will cost a fortune more money, because I haven't had the time to plan properly. And that's where portfolio management really can help, because it gives you the upfront visibility on at this time, quite high level, but still you will have the possibility to see what is the development, what do I need next year, and where do I have to react now that I do not get in trouble when it comes into the right time.
I understand. I think this place really brings together kind of the idea of you probably have, like, in a big organizations, you have an organizational goal, and then you break it down to what do I need in order to achieve that organizational goal. So you break it down to maybe portfolios, you break it then down to projects, and what do I need in order to complete that? Well, one thing is resources, the other thing is, of course, money. Two things, like, it connects the what do I need to achieve and the what I need to achieve. Very well, at least well thought out for me together.
Yeah, and both solutions, Clarity and ServiceNow, do one thing quite good, or very good in my opinion, is to really connect the dots from what is my strategy, what are my goals, and what projects and what portfolios to actually support it, so that you from both angles can actually see whether or not a specific project is helping your strategy developing or not. And based on that, this could also be a decision criteria. But if you're not able to link these elements together, you will lose a lot of information, and that's why it's quite handy. So yeah, and to finalize also here, last thing I want to show before I stop the demo. Also here, you want to have several plans, and you want to get an overview over how do these plans look like, versus what you mentioned before, like what is underlined, do I have some over allocations in terms of resources, or how does the budget looks like? Based on that, you can then start on working, okay, I'm going with this plan now, we decided to go down that path, then you set this as your current plan and start on executing against this one.
So this is very similar to what you showed in the Clarity side of things.
Exactly. Yeah, a little bit different visualized, but in general the same thing.
I think it might not come as a surprise as we've worked with these tools, but I think what's for me what's more and more clear and is that for proper planning and for properly managing your portfolios and investments, especially in a bigger organization, I'm sure you can manage it somehow in an Excel, but you really need something a bit more sophisticated. And I think we are in a great situation at the moment. There is a lot of good solutions. We just shown, I think, 2 really great solutions to managing your portfolios and planning your investments and planning your resources. And I believe that for really properly managing these, you need a proper software for that. I think if you look at the investment versus the benefit, I think it should be a no-brainer.
Yeah, I agree. And to be honest, even independently from the solution, I think there are a few components that you really need to be aware of. And I think we discussed this in one of the previous sessions. I think if you start to exceed more than several number of parallelly running projects, like 30 to 40 or something like that, you will get at a point where you really start getting troubles in maintaining the proper data for status reports, for getting the information to all the stakeholders that are necessary, and so on and so forth. And there, quite easily, you will see an ROI happening as soon as you start looking at a PPM tool, because the work has to be done anyhow. The people need to work on their projects. They need to maintain some information. The question is how much time they are going to waste with getting data from the Excel A to the Excel B to PowerPoint C to System D and back. And I think that's where, if you look at these things thoroughly and be honest with you in your organization, you will quite easily find a very good business case for that.
Yeah, and if you don't find a business case, we are happy to help you with that.
Of course.
All right, Manuel. Thank you. I think it was a good overview. We'll come back in the next couple of weeks again with something else. We just have to choose which one, or what do we come with?
I think resource management is still missing.
Yeah, I think resource management is probably the next topic.
That will be interesting.
Yeah, it's a tough topic.
It is, and it could be huge. But I'm looking forward to that. So
yeah, me too. So till the next time.
Till the next time. Thanks for watching. See you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.